The most successful project managers in engineering understand and leverage project controls, while other project managers don't even know what project controls are. Well, in this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, I have with me Matt Reuer. Matt is a licensed professional engineer, and he also is the manager of engineering controls for the Kiewit Engineering Group. And Matt's going to talk all about project controls and how you can utilize them to be a very successful project manager. Before we dive in with Matt, I do want to recognize our sponsor for this episode, Colliers Engineering and Design. Colliers Engineering and Design is a multidiscipline engineering firm with over 1,800 employees in 63 offices nationwide and growing fast. Colliers Engineering and Design maintains an internal culture that is nurtured through the promotion of integrity, collaboration, and socialization. Their employees enjoy hybrid work environments, continuous career advancement, health and wellness offerings, and programs and projects that have a positive impact on society. Colliers Engineering and Design stays on the cutting edge of technology, and their entrepreneurial approach to expansion provides personal and professional development opportunities across the firm. Leadership's dedication to the well-being of their employees and their families is demonstrated throughout the wide range of benefits and programs available to them. For more information, visit the career page on their website at colliersengineering.com. All right, now I'd like to welcome on our guest for today, Matt Reuer. Matt is a licensed professional engineer, and he's manager of project controls at Kiewit. Matt, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anthony. I'm glad to be here.
So, Matt, I'm excited to have you on today. I think that project controls is something that a lot of engineering professionals in the civil world aren't familiar with, and it is something that is important to be familiar with. So let's get started here, and maybe in your own words, Matt, tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. And I agree with you that project controls is probably one of those professions that is maybe misunderstood or not everyone really knows what it entails. So really on a daily basis, we work with our engineering teams and our engineering managers to help them understand how they're performing on their projects, whether it be from a cost standpoint, whether it be a schedule performance standpoint, and help them identify roadblocks that may be getting in their way from being the most efficient or meeting their schedule, and really help to develop some strategies to get over those hurdles or really make some changes in their delivery model to help them be the most efficient and execute the project the best way that they can.
So if someone asked you, Matt, what is project controls? Like, how would you actually define it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Really, project controls is fundamentally just the management of budgets, schedules, quality, and scope of a project. So monitoring and managing the budgets. Every project has a budget that they need to try and hit, and just monitoring how we're making progress against that budget and spending our money and our time against those budgets, and then monitoring the schedule as well. So are we making the progress that we need to make in order to deliver the engineering product on time? Are we falling behind schedule, and what can we do to catch up on that schedule?
That's great. And, we do a lot of work at EMI on helping engineering firms, consulting firms build project management training, like custom project management training for their companies. And in doing that, we interview a lot of the project managers, and I'm always surprised about how much lack of a knowledge there is around project controls. In fact, some project managers didn't even know that there's a project controls group within their company that they have access to that can help them do some of the things that you just explained on their projects. And maybe you can just speak to why it's important to pay attention to project controls.
Yeah, that's another good question. And really the importance is, those engineering managers or those project managers, they're all being judged isn't the right word, but they're being evaluated against how their project is performing. And if they don't know at any given time whether they're performing well against their schedule, whether they're performing well against their budgets, then it's hard for them to understand where they're headed if they don't know where they're at, right? So part of project controls isn't just looking backwards and evaluating the performance of the project as it stands at any given time. It's also looking forward to implement mitigation strategies to help the project manager understand where the risks may lie in the future as well, and be forward looking and get out in front of potential issues before it's too late.
Interesting and important, of course, for sure. You're right. I mean, engineers, project managers, they're evaluated on the success of their projects. And if a project controls group or professional can help them better monitor it, keep their schedule, keep their projects on track, it would only be beneficial to, of course, them and their team, the department, the company. So it can be very beneficial in a lot of ways. So let's talk a little bit about you for a second, Matt. You have a background in engineering, of course. I believe you have your master's in structural engineering. How did you get from the technical side of engineering into, what got you interested in kind of project controls and what you do today?
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how many times I get that question, especially even within my own company and my own group. So yeah, I do have a background in structural engineering. I spent the first 12 years of my career or so designing bridges, and very technical field, very process driven, and very regimented processes, but also very analytical. And so there's a lot of similarities between structural engineering and project controls, working with a lot of data, analyzing a lot of data in different scenarios. And then, also just, projects that I had worked on in the past, as previously when I was doing structural engineering, I had some experiences that projects weren't managed very efficiently, and I noticed some areas that could be improved. And here at Kiewit, we started to form our own engineering group, and that's when I transitioned over into project controls. Is when there was an opportunity to really step in and help define how we were going to support the projects from a project controls standpoint, and define how we're going to measure success for our projects. And so about 6 years ago, I stepped out of the engineering role and started to get involved with our project controls group, and we've grown significantly over the last 6 years. But really, there's to go back to your original question, was there's just a lot of similarities between engineering and project controls, and helping the project in general be successful, and not just focused on one aspect of the project is kind of one of the main reasons that I switched over.
That's great. And I think it speaks to, again, there's flexibility in your career as an engineer, and there are different things that you can do. And so if you're right now in your career doing calculations and doing design work, you may not be doing that, forever. You might find something else that you like, and there are different things that you can do. And different companies also have different opportunities within them, like Matt explained to Kiewit in the project controls. So Matt, are there any common misconceptions about project controls?
Yes, actually there are. Usually project controls gets a stigma of being very, and no pun intended, but very controlling. And it gets a negative connotation of always focusing on why are you over budget, or why are you behind schedule. And so, that comes with a lot of negative feelings and reactions. But really, what we try and strive for is to not just focus on the negatives, but to focus on the how do we get better? How do we, if we are behind schedule, what are the things that we can do to help get back on schedule? If we're spending too much, what are some strategies or some ideas of helping us, get back on track with our budget and really, be part of the team and be part of the solution and not just the bearer of bad news, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think that I can definitely see how it could be perceived that if you have to deal with project controls, that would mean that your project is in bad shape. Like kind of like you don't want to have to go down that road, which I don't think is a good thing. I mean, I know a lot of project managers, quite frankly, that rely heavily on their project controls team and they get regular reporting and things of that nature from that team to help keep them on track and kind of be proactive about their project. So it's good to hear you talk about that. Maybe on the flip side, you can talk about some of the benefits that you've seen in project controls and helping project managers in their projects.
Yeah, yeah. And just to kind of elaborate on what you just mentioned there is we've also noticed that the more successful jobs that we have are the ones that we've got really good engagement from our project managers, and they rely on our project controls group as a resource and a trusted resource. And on the flip side of that, the projects that don't go as well, it's more of an adversarial type of relationship. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, that you've experienced that as well. Really, the best benefits and what we see as the most beneficial parts of our project controls is the ability to look forward, and allow our project managers to get a better understanding of what's coming in the near-term future and how they can use that information to make decisions on the priorities of their project, on staffing. So, a great example is if our projects are performing well and we're beating our budgets and we're ahead of schedule, that probably means that we can start eliminating some staff from the project, right? Get them transferred to another job, and ultimately help save the project even more money and come in under budget, all while meeting our deadlines and producing a quality deliverable. So really, it's about the forward-looking side of the project and being able to make decisions that will ultimately make the job even more successful.
That's great. I'm glad to hear you say that, because another thing that I've heard from project managers that's one of the most challenging things for them is kind of resource loading and thinking about who works on what projects and when do they get moved to different projects. And I think it's a big thing to ask someone to do when they're managing all the other aspects of the project. So having a project controls group that can help with some of those things and kind of provide kind of that bird's eye view of this project and other projects at the same time, I think is extremely beneficial. And I do know that I'm sure that there's some of our listeners that just don't have those resources. Maybe they work for a smaller company. There isn't per se a project controls group, but there are certainly opportunities maybe with an accounting department at a smaller scale where they can give you some reports on a regular basis that can help you, get some of those metrics and view some of those things. It's just about taking the time to kind of work that out and kind of going in that direction a little bit here, Matt. What are some of the kind of project control reports that you might have in place or that you might use to help everyone on your team kind of figure out that best path forward on their projects?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And you mentioned, a finance group to help give some financial reports, and so we have a very very robust financial system that we use. So not only do we have weekly cost reports, but we also integrate the revenue side of things as well. So we have cost and revenue reports that our project managers have access to on a weekly basis and updated weekly. We also have a very wide array of earned value reporting, and so one of the main important factors of that is a well defined integrated project schedule. So you mentioned resource loaded reports, and so we put a lot of importance on defining a good CPM schedule and resource loading our CPM schedules. And then we update those schedules on a weekly basis. And so every week we have a pretty good understanding of what progress we made, what work got done, and how much work is remaining to do, and how productive we were on that work. So we can take that and project forward using our productivity, how many resources we need in the near term and in the long term to help us staff the project accordingly. And we break that down by design package, by discipline, by a few other factors that allow us to slice and dice the reporting in whatever form or fashion the project manager wants to see it in. We also have deliverable reporting. So what design deliverables are due in the next 3 weeks? What are due in the next month? Are we ahead or behind? So it's really those three main factors is what we focus on: is cost, productivity, and schedule.
That's great. And, it's good to hear you talk about these things, because I do think that one of the biggest challenges, or in some ways disappointments, when we talk to consulting and engineering firms, is a lot of them do have a really robust system that they can use to get information. The problem is the project managers don't know how to use it, and they don't know how to get the right information out of it. And that's, to me, it's just such a wasted resource. And so having someone or a group like a project controls group that really their job is to focus on that software, that research, and figure out how to get the information out and put it in the best format to show the project managers is really valuable. And quite frankly, I think that, I could see the justification of a project controls group, or the idea of having one, could be something where companies might fail to see the value of it. And I speak from experience, because we do a lot of PM training and people leadership training. And sometimes companies are like, they don't see the value of the training, but if we do our job right, then all of their managers get better at their jobs, right? And their projects become more profitable, which is the same thing with your job. If the project controls group is able to, help with resource loading and making sure that projects get done on time and on budget, it really pays for itself, probably 10 times, quite frankly. So it is good to hear you talk about that, because I really feel, and I'm sure you've had experience with this, that it's hard for sometimes people to figure these programs out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to elaborate a little bit on what you were mentioning there is, a lot of companies may have very robust finance and accounting systems, or a very robust scheduling system, but they don't talk to each other. Those systems don't, the data isn't integrated. And here at Kiewit, we focus a lot of energy on data integration between all of our systems, our ERP systems and our scheduling systems and our earned value and cost systems, so that we can ensure that if something changes in the schedule, it's reflected in the ERP system and in the cost control system, and vice versa. So that's a really good point that you bring up there, and then we focus a lot of energy on training our project managers on how to use those tools and how to interpret the reports that they're getting. Because to your point, if we could have the best software and the best tools available, but if the decision makers don't know how to access those reports or interpret those reports, then they're meaningless, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why I think it's so valuable to have a group like yours that can kind of guide them and help them with that, and make sure that they're getting the most out of the software, which the company is probably paying a lot of money for to begin with. So you certainly want to maximize that investment for sure.
Right.
So Matt, what would you say are some skills that one would need to be a good project controller?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First and foremost, it's the ability to listen. The project controls team is not, by no means are they a project manager, right? They don't make the decisions on the jobs. They're there to support the project manager. And so if our project controllers are not willing to listen to the struggles or the hurdles that the project manager may have, then it's hard for them to to be a trusted resource to that project manager to suggest possible mitigation strategies or suggest possible solutions to some of the problems that the project manager may have. So, really being able to listen to what the project manager is saying and understand some of the problems or the issues that the project may be facing at that time. I kind of alluded to it previously, but being able to build the trust, right? Being that trusted resource to the project manager so that he or she turns to the project controls team when they have an issue and they don't feel like they're on an island or they don't have any solutions or anybody to help them solve the problems. Our best project controllers are, excuse the cliche, but they're connected at the hip to the project manager, and they're able to identify potential issues maybe even before the project manager does, and take some of that weight and that responsibility off of the project manager.
No, that's great. And, it's when we do work with companies and we look at some of their project management or project managers' performance and evaluate them, it's always pretty much the ones that work closely with the project controls group. Their projects seem to do much better than those that don't. Again, for obvious reasons, I think that we talked about here throughout this episode so far. Matt, is there any last pieces of advice that you might give to an engineer out there that might be considering kind of going into project controls based on kind of your transition and your experience?
Yeah, I would say that project controls has exposure to many different aspects of engineering. It has aspects and exposure to the business side and the operations side of engineering. We also have involvement in the technical side of engineering and understanding what work is being completed. So really, project controls is a great opportunity to get a holistic view of everything that goes into executing an engineering project. So if there's engineers that are interested in getting more exposure to something other than just the design side or the technical side of an engineering project, project controls is a great avenue to get more exposure to that.
That's great. And one thing that I'll say to those out there listening, if your company doesn't have a project controls group at this point, maybe it's something that you could start in the future. I mean, it's certainly, it could be an exciting endeavor to start small with it, but then build up to it. I think that there's a huge opportunity for more companies to have project control teams or departments in place, because with the complexity of projects today, project managers need help and they can't manage every aspect of the project. It's like a coach on a team. You have a head coach, but then you need a lot of assistants to give you different information because you can't handle all of it. So I think it's an exciting area in the field. And I appreciate Matt kind of coming on and talking us through it today. What we're going to do here is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with Matt, and we're going to wrap up by putting him on the civil engineering hot seat. All right, we're back with our guest for today, Matt Reuer. Matt's a licensed professional engineer, and he's manager of project controls at Kiewit. Matt, are you ready for the civil engineering hot seat?
Yeah, I'm ready for you.
All right, let's go. All right, so first question, Matt, do you have any specific rituals or routines that you practice every day? Maybe a morning routine or a lunchtime routine, or just something that you do consistently on a daily basis that has contributed to your success?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I know it may sound cliche, but I do like to work out in the morning, and I've got some young children at home, so that's not always realistic to think that I'm going to do that every morning, but I do that as much as I can, and also just from a professional standpoint, just writing a to-do list. I know it sounds very simple, but just prioritizing the tasks for the day and checking those off one by one really helps me to focus on what needs to be accomplished and be productive for the day.
And is that something you do like first thing in the morning, or?
Yep. First thing when I sit down at my desk, I try and it doesn't have to be a long list. It could be the top 3 things that I want to get accomplished today, or The three things that I really need to focus on in order to be productive for that day.
Awesome. That's great. All right. Next question, Matt. Is there one book that has stood out for you in your career or life that has been beneficial to you that you might recommend to others, along your career journey that has stuck out?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to narrow it down to one book. So I may have a couple that I throw in
That's
there,
fine.
but probably my number one is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Just the mentality and the philosophy of from a leadership standpoint of always taking ownership of everything that's in your control. If you're leading a team, and your team is not performing well, taking ownership of that, and don't point blame at somebody else when it's something that you can really control. And then probably another one, it's almost 180-degree different type of book, but Elon Musk's autobiography is very fascinating to me. Just him as an individual and how he views risk in life and in business is really fascinating, and just how he goes about managing all of his businesses.
That was great. I have to. Extreme Ownership has now come up on the podcast. I would say probably 7 to 10 guests in the recent 30, 40 episodes, and I haven't read it yet. I've definitely got to pick that one up. I keep hearing about that. They both sound like really interesting reads, so thanks for sharing those with us for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so Matt, thinking back on some of your managers of the past throughout your career, you don't have to name any names specifically, but if you think about some of your maybe favorite managers along the way, what was it that made them your favorite? We're just trying to understand kind of in the engineering world, what are some of the traits and characteristics of great managers?
Yeah, I would say finding the balance between, micromanaging and macromanaging. So finding that right balance of how often and how frequent to touch base and check in, but allowing the freedom to explore different avenues to get to a conclusion. Not setting too many stringent rules and expectations, but setting the expectations for the outcome and the result, and letting me find the right path and the most efficient path to get to that result.
That's great. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's something that I think is kind of an art in itself, actually. And we do teach a course on delegation as part of our advanced leadership course. And in that course, we talk about kind of that fine line between, giving someone something and kind of letting them do it without micromanaging, but at the same time, not letting them go off on a tangent for 2 weeks without having some guidance from you. So I think there is a real important balance there. And I found that great managers kind of can feel what that balance is, because it's probably different with every person, but I think it's an important part of, being a successful manager for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I've got one final question for you, Matt. We call it the civil engineering career elevator advice question. So if you got into an elevator with a civil engineer, let's say they were maybe younger in their career, earlier on in their career, and you had about 30 to 40 seconds with him or her, what is some career advice that you might share with that individual?
Yeah, probably the first thing that I would share is don't turn down any opportunity. You may not think that you're qualified for it. You may not feel like it's the most comfortable opportunity in the world, but getting different exposure and different experiences within the industry, engineering or construction, getting out in the field is invaluable, and getting an understanding of how what you're engineering is actually going to be constructed. That will benefit every engineer tenfold. One of my favorite quotes is from Richard Branson, who's the founder and CEO of Virgin, and he said, "If a great opportunity is presented to you, say yes, and then figure out how to do it later." And so, just take every opportunity that you can get to get different experience and different exposure, and it will I guarantee you it will benefit you in your career.
That's great advice. And I've heard that from several, just talking with friends and colleagues in the world of engineering. When I ask them kind of how they got to where they were, a lot of times what they'll say is, I said yes to opportunities, and I think that that's important. I know sometimes it can be a little bit scary because you don't know exactly what that opportunity entails, but like Matt shared the quote there, you can kind of figure it out along the way, but at least you're getting into that opportunity and kind of running with. So Matt, thanks so much for spending some time with us on the Civil Engineering Podcast. I know project controls, I think it's a really important topic and really something important for civil engineering professionals to know about if they don't. And I appreciate you spending some time with us today to share it with them.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Matt Reuer. This podcast is all about helping civil engineering professionals be well-rounded. And understanding project controls, to me, is really critical. Even if you work for a company that doesn't have its own project controls group, it's just being aware of them can help you learn about that topic and be more successful as a project manager or a civil engineer going forward in your career. Please remember that we publish videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and better leaders. Please consider subscribing here so that we can help you each and every week. I'll see you next week.